there. Let me know if my mic is okay. I know this is like such a small scale for what I'm used to like working on. But this is typically how I do individual like pixel art, because if I think about the whole piece, it becomes a bit overwhelming. But this is really just like a fan piece. I'll zoom out in just a second, just so I can give you guys like a better idea on what I'm actually like working on. Cause I was trying to have this done like months ago before the fall started, before like the fall semester and school started and whatnot. But as of right now, that's what I'm working on. This is really just like a fan piece, and that's how far I've gotten. I know it looks a little weird, but once the whole piece is done, so my bajillion layers in Illustrator, then it's gonna look like this. And I hope that I just hope that this turns out pretty good. Because it's going to be obviously like pretty big. I think it's going to be like 26 by 44 by the time this is done. Of course I'm going to move things around like a billion times, but... And it's going to freeze up. Because this is such a large file. I'm doing one for also Rev as well. But, I just can't wait to see till it's like done. But I try to save every now and again just so that when the time comes and it doesn't have it give me a hint that I wouldn't lose too much progress. But it's like even like the mushroom is like the only things that aren't I think I turned up my mic. Let me turn on my music too, because as much as I wanna blast Hyper Potions, I can't really do that today. I know I have like 14 layers worth of nonsense today. What am I doing? Oh, okay. I thought I lost my place. I was like, did I not do that layer? It's the worst when that happens, when you kind of lose your place on one layer. But yeah, this is also a new headset, so I've been trying to get it to work right with everything else. Let's see. Alright. So, I think it's like part of my favorite part of, working on pixel art like this, because I can kind of take my time and work on it as I please having to instead of having to sit here and try to get it all done in one day or a week or whatever, like I did with the game jam from over the summer. Now, of all the pixel art pieces, I think this is the first one that I'm not necessarily doing for like school or for a class project or something like that. Yeah, I turned down my music. Yeah, I know it's like my mic, so it could probably get a little iffy once I start to save, like later on. Just because I'm like switching between like a gajillion different tools today. Normally haven't. Normally I wouldn't do this in like Photoshop or anything, but tool of choice is definitely Illustrator. I think it's because I'm probably more familiar with Illustrator than I am with Photoshop or anything else. But I think each individual pixel, if I remember correctly, is, yeah, as you can see at the top of my screen, up here, they're each about 0.14 of an inch big. It's really just so I can get that detail. So if I have to make everything bigger, it's still going to retain that same level of detail that I would like to keep in the shirt and in the face and everything else. Now, faces is where it really starts to show that pixel art kind of style. But I know that like once I start to get further down in the shirt, I'm gonna have to add a few more pixels here and there because there's gonna start to be, like we see here, some of the spacing where I had to start adding like individual like tiny little pixels there just so that I don't have to stretch things out and make things distort very weird. It always helps to, even if you're copying and pasting the same line, to make sure that everything stays lined up because things can still like misalign and whatnot just by some random nature. Which is something I really don't mind having to do, but it's still a lot easier than having to copy and paste each individual pixel. Now, the streamer who I'm doing this for, I actually met at a convention. I was lucky enough to meet them at a convention last summer called Too Many Games out in Pennsylvania. And I'm planning on going again this year, but I'm trying to have the pixel art done by then so I can actually like give it to him. Even if he doesn't want it, it's still something I can hang up on my wall and be proud of. That's something that I took my time and did for myself. Oops. Now, some of these pixels I'm leaving behind, even though they'll be behind certain things, it's gonna come in handy a little bit later on when I have to get past the bottom of the shirt. Thank you. every now and again, it's like, it looks like there's spaces in there as I zoom out, but there's no spaces in there. I'll show you what I mean in just a second. Like, but when I do it out even to 100%, like when I do it to 100%, it looks great. But I'm working on such a small, because I'm working on such like a small scale, it looks. Let me put the button player back on. But some of the pixels I'm trying to make a little bit larger, like for the buttons, because it's easy, because I don't need to put as much detail in the buttons as I would for the rest of the shirt. But after after I'm done with the shirt and actually the rest of the piece, for this part, I probably won't have to blow it up as big or anything. I might only have to blow it just a tiny bit. And I keep having to scroll down for that shirt. But I feel like 400% is like a good working part for me, because I feel like I don't have to focus as much on particular areas and whatnot. But the eyedropper tool is definitely has been a lifesaver for me for the past like 2 pixel art pieces that I've done, because it makes something that would normally take, I want to say, like double the amount of time and cuts it down to what I'm doing right now. And of course, like the command keys that I'm using are I for the eyedropper and V to copy the color. And sometimes it's hard to tell if I changed like a color or not, because sometimes it's like the color's already so similar to something that's directly above it that I don't have to change it. But usually I don't know until I actually sit here with the eyedropper tool and do anything about it. But I do like how it does make the natural gradient for me. And every now and again I'll just turn it off to make sure there's still like spaces on this level. But the reason why I'm not doing like everything on the same layers, because they kind of think about it like when you actually have on like a shirt and a jacket, they are separate layers, if that makes sense. So instead of just doing everything on one layer, I just decided I was going to do everything on separate layers just to make my life easier and whatnot. Yeah, I noticed that on my headset was a little quiet. Well, I'm trying to think about how other ways, but yeah. Once I'm done the shirt, I know I have the shirt, the collar, and the buttons on separate layers, but it makes my life easier to get in that way to get a natural gradient out of the shirt here. I know it seems like such a roundabout way to do something, but in the long run, it's not going to be that bad. I think about it kind of like a printer with this kind of stuff. Actually, so most of the time when I leave the that one extra pixel behind there, it's just so that when I do have to readjust things like that, I don't have to add that extra pixel at a later time. I kind of have to always think about how much space I actually have left to, like, work on something. Because I know it's like some of these pixels are very light and very hard to see. Yeah, it's like, but it's kind of easy, like, once it's kind of pixelated like this to get a better idea on the pixel art, because even though it's like it's much bigger than my reference layer, even though the individual pixels are much larger than my pixel layer, it's still giving it that same effect from, I want to say, like, kind of early 90s AMV games, which was part of my inspiration for stuff like this, and the fact that I've never done pixel art before a piece that I used in my thesis like a year ago. It's just anybody can do pixel art. It's just very tedious. I know it's like from a distance, like the shirt looks like it's white, but then once you get down onto all these individual like little layers and whatnot to the edge of the jacket. Now, the reason why I kind of go up to the very edge of the jacket is so that when I actually do get to that jacket, it's actually going to be the layer that's over the shirt, so I can cover the edge of that layer up. And if need be in Photoshop, I can just take this into Photoshop and blur the edge. I haven't really touched this pixel art piece as much, but this is probably one of my more favorite ones, outside of the Game Jam one that I worked on like over the summer, because that was 8-bit, so it was a lot easier to work on something like that rather than this. Now I can't start to hide pixels anymore. I can't really hide, like, I think it was like with the other one, with my first one, I kind of just threw pixels everywhere. And it kind of turned out okay, but this one is I honestly have to say probably the more fun piece to work on. I feel like I'm more controlled with it. Okay, now I have to do the thing that I thought I had to do. Alright. Actually, what I'm gonna do is, and this is the pain in the neck part that it's like I knew I was gonna have to do at some point. It's easier just to like do it like this, to have to readjust pixels like a jillion times. Like, I'd rather sit here and readjust it now rather than it becoming a problem like later on. And sometimes I have to like redo the color on here, which usually isn't a big deal with stuff like this, to have to redo a few colors. But if it was the whole row, I would have been not having that today. So now I just have to vertically align this. Now, vertically aligning something like this is just, I'm saving myself the heart attack of later on having to do this. Now, luckily there's not a whole lot left in the shirt to really have to work on, but which is fine, because I've been working on this shirt since probably late August. It's hard for the long save times. Just when you have thousands and thousands of pixels trying to be saved in their location at one time, then that becomes like kind of a big thing. I like to kind of like pre-align it like to where it's gonna be, so that there's not a whole lot left of the shirt really to work with. Because once I get down to here, I just have to kind of just start chopping things off, which is gonna make it go by faster and faster and faster. And it's like such like the minor little details. You kind of gotta not think about the whole end piece with it, because if you do, it kind of becomes a little overwhelming. Like, it's always interesting to see, like, how, like, the light colors kind of transition into the dark ones. And also, the one other thing that I like about pixel art is that the more detail you add, it's easier to see certain gradients that just kind of naturally appear with stuff like this. Now, if I use larger pixels, I start to lose a lot of those details. Like, I'm sure you've seen, like, a lot of those pictures where if you kind of like blow it up and make it big, then you kind of see how all the detail kind of goes away. That is what happens with pixel art too. And I kind of learned that the hard way while experimenting with this kind of stuff. And I think after depending on when I get done this shirt, I think I'm gonna also start a 3D model piece today for anybody who's here, for my costume that I'm going to be wearing. Hopefully this summer. It's going to be the staff from Star Guardian Lulu, because that's a cosplay I've been also trying to chip away at today. But I haven't gotten around to finishing up making the shirt for it yet. Which that's I know is going to take a while. Because it's technically two shirts, like a tank top and whatever, but it's like back to this pixel art. Like all these dark areas, all like the dark areas that you see here are the folds in the shirt. And all the lighter areas are obviously the ones that are getting hit by light. But I do enjoy how a lot of this stuff is very, like, relaxing. But everybody's different with how this kind of stuff is. Sometimes if you don't hit... Because, I know it's a little awkward, but pretty much, like, as I'm working on this, my left hand is... My index finger is on I, and my ring finger is on V, to be able to hit both keys pretty much in, like, as soon as I need to. Yeah, it's like some areas I'm kind of like not really thrilled about having to work on. But just having to work on pixel art is always kind of like a relaxing kind of a thing for me. I don't have to put as much time, like, effort into it as some other, like, art pieces that I normally work on. But the playlist I'm listening to now is just a whole bunch of Hyper Potions music. They're a very good group, and I definitely recommend their stuff. Like, I find that their music is, like, the best kind of music to, like, do work to, along with Sean Wasabi. Those are two artists that I like to work to. I had to. Sometimes it's like I confuse myself and see where I'm kind of ending up. See if I have like enough pixels. But you'll see like what I mean. I'm gonna back out for just a minute, and you see, I mean, all those dark areas along there are like the folds of the shirt, and that's what we're kind of getting to now. Is like this crease in here, and kind of like this shadow here. But it creates like some interesting like angles once you kind of turn on and off the layers. Like I have a separate layer for the buttons. I really need to move. Yeah, I have a separate layer for the buttons, a separate layer for this part, and so I kind of shoved the shirt behind that collar a little bit, so it makes it still look like it's part of the shirt. But eventually, I'm gonna put that sweater. The sweater's gonna be its own separate layer, but it's gonna go on top of all these other layers here. I realized something that this. Yeah, because this was about to be on completely wrong layer for a minute. Actually. I think what I'm going to do with this section, since this section is technically part of the shirt, what I'm going to do that is I'm going to... Actually, I'll just fix... If I do that, because I could just do that, add that as a separate layer later on. I know I always debate with myself on when I should do certain things. Cause I told myself to not forget to do that part as I'm working on the rest of the shirt. But I had to move things over, like pixel by pixel sometimes, just because it like kind of gets on my nerves. Cause I forgot that headset cord wasn't part of the jacket. I completely forgot because I've had to look at the same picture for months. And I haven't worked on this in about 4 months. Since like maybe January. It's usually pretty nice to get done a few, or at least part of a layer for pixel art, because once it's done, it's kind of like you kind of go back and remember how you did it and all the accomplishment that of like getting through it and like going through it and like being done with it finally. And but it's still one of those fun things to kind of like work on. And it's like the 37-year save just for this one thing. Alright, now that part's done. Now that part of that is done, um, go back to kind of like getting on that small scale level. Now, when I do get to the other part of that shirt at some point, yeah, that is so true. I love having long-term projects like this, especially when you don't gotta really rush through it or anything. Yeah, this is just one of those projects where I feel like if I really take my time on it, it's gonna look really nice. But I just know it's gonna take me forever. I didn't honestly didn't expect it to take more than like a month or two. Oh yeah, that's true too. It's so much like meditating because it's like it feels like with some art projects feels like oh you gotta rush through it because it's for somebody. Oops. But if it's if it's something that it's like you like to do, if it's an art piece you really actually want to work on, go ahead and do you. Sorry, I'm like trying to like fix a million things. Cause I'm kind of like looking and see like what's going on, what layer. Kind of like nearly a big pet peeve that I have with working on some of these pixel art pieces is how I feel like I that sometimes I'm not making progress as fast as I should because I remember I had a professor tell me forever ago that I don't think about that I think too hard on my work. And I know that about myself that I think way too hard about pieces sometimes instead of just jumping in and just working on it, which can sometimes be a fault, but not always a bad thing. Like originally, like I was a graphic design major, but I think it's like with the love of pixel art and trying to make movement happen, I quickly switched over to animation and had enough credits to finish out my animation degree last spring. And but still have like this kind of love of doing pixel art like this because you kind of get that movement and with packaging design and whatnot. So I kind of think of this kind of stuff as like when people see this kind of stuff, I know they're gonna kind of want to like look for those minor details, and that's kind of like the stuff I like to add in my work. Is all like these really tiny little details that, like, oh, you think it was done as like a digital illustration or a digital painting, but it's not. No, it's pixel art. Which I don't mind. Yeah, I like how some of the colors already naturally like kind of line up, which is nice. Now, the reason I kind of started lining it up with that far left edge over there is because most of what's going to be in that far left edge is going to be part of that part of that sweater. But I like being able to see like the shift in the natural gradient of stuff like this. Now, if this was just like one plain black shirt, there wouldn't be as much detail in here. Instead of it being a black and white shirt. That's the unfortunate thing about white t-shirts is once you start to put that detail in there, from light reflection, it becomes a kind of a pain in the neck. So I'm kind of like trying to get an idea on how this is kind of gonna naturally like go. It looks like again I have to add pixels again to this one edge. Actually, no, I don't. Yes, I do. Alright, see ya. Alright. That's time for another save. But alright. Sorry about that. I had a message. Alright. Now, one of my most favorite things about having a piece that's this kind of like a few different art styles is that you can kind of make it work as long as it's cohesive. Like some of the stuff I was like inspired by this streamer's music, right? I was very much inspired by his music for some of the design. And some of the things that he also streamed in the past, I kind of take a little bit of inspiration from that. But I'm not really like too much of an organic 3D modeler, so I didn't want to make any 3D pieces really, because that was gonna take me way too long, like longer than I really would have liked it to have. Let's see. Alright. Alright. There we go. Alright, so after I get done this one more row, I'm actually gonna have to cut the stream short because something came up a little bit and I thought I was gonna have a little bit more time to stream than I actually did. I'm sorry for having to do this to everyone who's still here. But there's other days to stream. At least after this, so especially with college and everything. And it's life happening. Alrighty, sorry I had to cut the stream short for you guys, but maybe I'll stream another day next week. Probably about Monday or something like that. Alright, have a good afternoon, everyone.